Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I had everything ready to go and then the power went off for just a second.
We had that same issue here, so that's why we're a little bit behind getting everything up and going.
Yeah, my computer's still late. So it was telling me that they couldn't connect while I was seeing all of you guys, so I was very confused.
All right, well, it's about 3:31 and we'll call the meeting of the Utility and Transportation Advisory Commission. Call to order, and Lisa, if you wouldn't mind doing a roll call for us.
No problem. Commissioner Bennett.
Present.
Here. Commissioner Kress. Commissioner Williams.
Sorry, I was trying to get my board docs back up and all of a sudden everything disappeared. Yes, I'm here.
Commissioner Tessman.
Here.
Commissioner Riggle.
Here.
We do have a quorum. All here.
Okay.
Not all here.
To start with, is there any public comment today?
No one sent any public comment in. If anybody in attendance would like to speak. We don't have any virtual attendees.
Okay, seeing nobody, we'll move on to approve the agenda, or we have a consent agenda, which is the approving the agenda for today, approve the minutes for February 10. Do we have a motion to approve those on the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda and minutes.
Okay. Any comment on those two items that are on the consent agenda?
Councilmember Williams, I second the motion.
Okay, we have a second. Hearing no comments, and all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Sure.
Oh.
Okay, and it is carried. All right, we have a presentation from Sean Moffitt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right here. Yep.
John.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate the opportunity to come here. Just recently, we've had a change. The position that we had was our area manager position, who was in Walla Walla and helped oversee College Place. We've had a change in that position, and the new person that we're having fill that is on video camera, Jade Meekum. Just a little bit of history behind Jade. Jade has been working with us, probably going to mess this up, but I think at least 8 years. Jade's currently our project manager in Roseburg, Oregon. And I guess if I could say one thing about him, when we let Roseburg, the client there, know that Jade was coming here, definitely had some comments for us, not very happy. And so I think anytime you have that happen, you know that they're doing a really good job at where they're at. And yet he still understood that this was a really good opportunity for Jade and his family. Jade has a daughter and a son. His daughter is a phenomenal gymnast. And so they're excited to get over this area, because I know there's a really good school for her in Kennewick with a gymnastics school. But if you want to, Jade wants to say anything, if I missed that.
Yeah, good afternoon. And you were almost right. I've been on board just a little over 10 years. And I'm looking forward to coming to Walla Walla and College Place and becoming part of the community and helping where I can. If anyone has any questions, I'm ready.
All right, well, welcome, Jade. Look forward to working with you. I'm sure the city does too.
And just so everyone on this commission is a little aware, take a step back for a minute. So we contract out operations to a wastewater treatment plant, as well as maintenance of the wastewater mains and so forth, to Jacob's group. So so that's like a private public partnership. So just to provide some clarity on that.
Very good.
Oh,
Okay,
no.
Commissioner Williams.
Hi, I want to welcome you and say I look forward to working with you from the city. And
Uh-oh.
Okay, we lost you partway through that.
And Commissioner Kress is on an attendee. I'm attempting to promote him to a panelist, but it is not.
And Jade, I'll just pass on that in case you didn't hear it. She was welcoming you.
Well, yes, thank you very much. I look forward to getting up there.
All right. Anybody else? Okay. Well, thank you, Jade. And
Thank you so much.
thank you. All right. Thank you, Sean. Okay, next we have a report from McKinstry.
I'll provide that.
Okay.
Just give you a little bit of an update on that. So they are the energy savings contractor we utilize to apply for grants to make buildings more sustainable, and also for some of our initiatives going into the solar power. So from the solar panel perspective, that project is now fully funded and executed. So we end up getting grants totaling about almost 550,000 from TransAlta, which is this like private company, and then Pacific Power Blue Sky program, and then the state. So there will be 111 kilowatt solar array constructed behind the fence at the water tanks off of Whitman and Maple. The thing to note on that is, unfortunately, there's a very long lead time now on the supplies for the solar panels, because I was hoping to get them installed before the summer, but that's looking dimmer and dimmer. So they are now saying that likely the construction will be going on throughout late summer. So likely August, September-ish. So if you see a lot of construction out there, because the new well's also on that same street, that's why. Also other projects that they're working on with me is they're doing an audit of our fire station and the public works yard to try to put in some additional generators and equipment. So we are pursuing some Homeland Security and FEMA grant funding to fix the fire station. Although that's relatively new, there still are items there that are aging out, and then the public works yard especially needs work, because some of those buildings are actually old chicken coops that were converted to staff facilities. They actually predate the city existing, so.
I wanted to note that we lost Commissioner Williams and gained Commissioner Kress.
So I'll entertain any questions if there's any on the McKinstry item.
I have one.
Yeah.
The solar project partnering with TransAlta.
Yeah.
How does that work? Is there a savings payback to TransAlta
No.
as it goes on, or?
No, they just have like a private foundation that they give money to, and then they give it out to community. They suspended giving money for 2 years, but then I just kept bugging them to go give money, so then they gave the full amount. So there isn't a payback that we have to get them. In fact, we'll actually be making money on the solar array, because we'll make to a tune of about 13,000 a year off of it.
It's like Commissioner Williams is attempting to come back.
I see you again. Can you hear me?
Good.
Yes,
We can
do.
hear you.
That was an adventure and a half.
Welcome back.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any other questions for Mike on those projects?
Oh, I just
Yeah.
want to know, so is there a tax incentive for it too? Is it like the residential stuff? Because I have solar at my
Yeah.
house, so it's pretty much like that where,
Well, yeah, so Pacific Power for the folks who opt into their solar program, some of that is predicated on the fact that there's gonna be solar like somewhere. So this is part of that, the fact that we'll be producing the energy, and then there's money that comes back to us, like beyond what's going into them as well. So we'll end up ahead of the game about 13,000 a year.
it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you were mentioning the fire station, I was thinking how big that roof is up there.
Yeah, well, that's actually one of the things that they're gonna take a look at, and then also the generator's getting really wonky over there, so we need to likely replace that.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have a presentation from RH2 on the draft water system plan. Ryan, are you with us? I see you.
I am, yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Very well. Okay, so yeah, I'm Ryan with RH2 Engineering. I was the consultant hired to manage and prepare the city's recently updated water system plan. Some of you may recall I presented at your mid-February meeting, but now that the water system plan is closer to being recommended for adoption by council, it was requested that I come back and provide a refresher of this document to all of you. So we'll go through this here. Next slide. So historically, the Department of Health has required water system plan updates every 6 years. So beginning in 2020, it was time to begin updating the city's water system plan. And the document that you either have in front of you or have reviewed or have available to you is the updated water system plan. The Department of Health has been in the process of reviewing for a number of months now. They've provided comments and now are subsequently reviewing the updated version of the document that includes our responses to their comments. This plan has been through the public comment and public hearing processes, specifically in December of 21. No comments were received. And over this past year or even almost 15 months, we've received reviews and consistency statements from other water systems adjacent to the city planning department, county planning, and the county Department of Health. I also provided a summary of this plan and its status to council last week as a way to introduce the plan, similar to the presentation and talk I gave with you a couple of months ago, such that when the Department of Health is ready to approve this water system plan, adoption by everybody at the city can be relatively efficient. I won't go through the bullets of all of these sort of timeline related details unless you'd like me to, but in summary, this plan should be approved by the Department of Health. My fingers are crossed for that occurring this month, and you will get a 10-year approval dating back to when this was last submitted to them. So that should get you approval for your water system plan through December 31st of 2031. Next slide. This is a bulleted list of really just the major components of a water system plan. The highlights are including estimated future demands over the next 20 years, determining your system capacity. Are there improvements necessary to resolve any deficiencies or to accommodate growth? Evaluating your water quality, O&M program, your design standards, and then evaluating the financial side of the water utility. Next slide. So speaking on future growth, we evaluated the city's 20-year population growth projections, coordinated with John Ricard to ensure consistency with those projections and consistency with your future land uses as well. As I mentioned, we received county planning department consistency approval for these projections. And then we took those population growth projections and turned them into demand projections for the water system, and then characterized those demands both with and without potential savings from water use efficiency. Next slide. So speaking on water use efficiency, the Department of Health has a water use efficiency rule, which we evaluated, can confirm that the city meets all aspects of, some with flying colors, really. The city is continually in the 4 or 5% distribution system leakage range, which is fantastic. The Department of Health likes to see all systems under 10%. So being in the 4 to 5% range is great. So one of the goals of the water use efficiency program was to attempt to maintain your leakage at 5% or less, which again, you've historically been able to do, as well as reducing your average demand per capita by 3% over the next 20 years. And just as a data point here, over the last 7 years or so, you've actually decreased your demand per capita by 6%, which is great. The issue with that is it's unlikely that you're going to be able to maintain that 6% demand per capita reduction on a 6 or 7 year basis, because there's still going to be baseline water use in your system. So you're going to start to hit diminished returns. But we felt 3%, a 3% reduction would be a reasonable goal to strive towards over these next 20 years. Next slide, please. On the system capacity side of things, we analyzed the capacity of the city's, the water rights, the sources, the storage facilities, and the transmission mains, and assumed that the completion of well 6 and backup power at well 3 had taken place. And we are very well aware that those projects aren't yet complete, but we didn't want the sort of the baseline planning period for your water system plan to be out of date, a few months or within a year of the plan being approved. So we made that assumption. We were very clear on it, so we weren't misleading to the Department of Health. But anyway, with those couple of projects assumed to be complete, what you're looking at here are 3 clusters of bars. At the top, sort of the existing planning period, in the middle, the 2031 planning period, and at the bottom, the 2040 planning period. And each of those different colored bars represents those different aspects of the water system infrastructure. And the red line, kind of zigging and zagging its way through roughly the center of the slide, shows the projected number of equivalent residential units that the water system is projected to need to serve each of these years. So in short, all of these different colored bars of yours extend well beyond the red line. So your system at a very high level has plenty of capacity and can support more growth, more people, more demand than you actually have or are projected to have. Next slide, please. So on the improvement side of things, again, I mentioned well 6 and backup power at well 3 as improvements. But even though the entire system has capacity, which we established on the previous slide, that doesn't mean that on a smaller level, on a more neighborhood by neighborhood basis, or however micro you want to get, that there's not still some deficiencies or still some areas that need a little bit of attention. So this slide shows the major improvement projects that are identified in your water system plan. And then we've also identified a prioritized water main replacement program, just using very simple low, medium, and high priority improvement rankings that consider your water main age, material. Is it undersized? How undersized is it? Does the maintenance crew constantly have to be out in a specific location over and over dealing with breaks? Those types of properties, and trying to identify pipes that really should be kind of on the high short list of pipes to be replaced in the next 20 years, and then prioritized all of them. And certainly the intention is not to replace all of your pipes in the next 10 or 20 years, but allow you to have a real targeted effort to focus on the true high priority pipes, which works out to about $250,000 per year in water main replacements. And then have the more low, medium priority pipes at least identified in this water system plan, such that if you ever need to be in those roads in the next 10 or 20 years, you can look at your water system plan and notice, okay, we do need to replace this pipe. Maybe this is the time with the road open to take care of a water main replacement or upsizing. And we took those improvements, prepared a financial plan to fund those improvements, coordinated extensively with Brian Carlton. He's reviewed all of the data and the recommendations. And that, in a nutshell, is what is included in your water system plan. So yeah, on the next slide, I believe it's just questions. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions? Ryan, on page 6, the the water capacity
Mhm.
page there. How does that compare? I mean, it looks really good because we're kind of halfway, but what is the, if you were to put an industrial user in there, say a medium-sized industrial user, how much would that line shift versus the equivalent residential household? So what does that capacity mean?
Yeah, so it's all in terms of equivalent residential units. So if your large industrial user used the same amount of water as, say, 1,000 homes, let's say, I would say that would be very, very large, right? That would shift this line 1,000 units to the right. So instead of being close to like 4,000 ERUs, it would jump over to say 5,000 ERUs. So a user of that size, which again, that would be very considerable, would still leave you, whether you want to look at sort of today or 10 or 20 years out, would still leave you with about 800 or so ERUs of capacity. So even with a large user coming on, you would still have significant capacity remaining in your system.
Okay, yeah, I just was kind of wanting some perspective on that, on what a large industrial user was. So, yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Any online comments? Okay, thank you, Ryan, for that presentation.
You're very welcome. Thank you all.
You're addressing that a little later too, so. All right, next is Alex Fazzari with JUB on our draft general sewer plan.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, similar to Ryan with the water system plan, we presented this to you a few months ago and then again to council last week. And so this is the same presentation we went through. So I'll go through it a little more quickly this time, although I suppose it'll be really interesting to Jade to learn a little bit more about the sewer collection system we're handing him the keys over to. So next slide, please. So the objectives for this general sewer plan, to give you just a little reminder on the history, it started off as what ecology refers to as a fiscal sustainability plan or an asset management plan. It was one of the requirements for the funding that ecology provided for the design of the wastewater treatment plant. It's one of the requirements to make sure that whoever they give money to are properly planning for the asset management. So we completed that asset management plan, and as part of when we were partway through, it was decided we could go ahead and take it to the next level of what ecology refers to as a general sewer plan. So the general sewer plan document is something that every community is supposed to have on file and approved by ecology. College Place does not currently have one, so this document is supposed to fit that bill. And essentially, by having an approved general sewer plan on file, it allows you to get ecology funding for all of the projects identified in the plan. And so that's an important thing we wanted to make sure happened. And so as part of the general sewer plan, basically it's an evaluation of the existing sewer collection system. So we developed some scoring criteria for all of the existing pipes to help prioritize which ones should be replaced sooner than others. And it also includes a plan to sewer all of the currently unsewered areas within the UGA. Next slide, please. And then we also developed a 10-year capital improvement plan of all of the prioritized pipes that needed to be replaced and a budget for that. And then finally, we just wanted to make sure it met ecology's requirements for a general sewer plan so that they would approve it. Next slide, please. So this is an example of one of the maps that we were able to put together as part of our effort. So we used a lot of your existing GIS system. And so this is an example of a map that shows all of the pipes classified by pipe size. So this is a map in GIS, which will be really helpful for all of your city staff to be able to pull it up and look at the mapping for the locations of all of the existing pipe sizes. You can see the main trunk runs down that old railroad corridor towards the wastewater treatment plant. And then up within town, generally everything drains from northeast to southwest, kind of following the lay of the land. Next slide, please. Here's another one of the maps that we were able to put together. This is a classification of all the pipes by materials. So we're able to identify which pipes have more of the modern materials of PVC versus some of the older pipes like concrete that we're going to need to be replacing relatively soon. So again, just an example of the good information that you and your staff now have. Next slide, please. And then similarly, this is a map of the pipe age. We weren't able to get exact years of installation, but we're able to get down to about the nearest decade. So that's a pretty good starting point in terms of determining age of pipe and when it was installed. Next slide, please. And then finally, the pipe condition. This one is a little bit more subjective. Normally a city would do some camera surveys of all of their pipelines and come up with some rating criteria to come up with scores for pipe condition. That's not something that College Place has, but we were able to sit down with the operations staff and generally identify which pipes are the most trouble pipes for the maintenance crews. Which ones do they go visit the most frequently? Which ones do they know are a real problem? And so this is a little bit of a subjective rating, but it's a good starting point to help us identify which pipes we really want to target sooner rather than later. Next slide, please. So in developing the capital improvement plan for which pipes to target over the next 10 years, we wanted to make sure we coordinated with any other planned infrastructure projects, for example, any roadway projects that are planned in the next 10 years, and really minimize any of the current O&M problem areas, the ones that the maintenance staff might need to be visiting every month or so. And then also identify the appropriate level of rehabilitation and develop some planning level costs for that capital improvement plan. Next slide, please. So this is a map showing what the end result was in terms of that prioritization effort. So this is our scoring system that we came up with, and we show it right here in terms of letter grades from A through F. The F-rated pipes, the red ones, are the ones that we're really targeting here in the next 10 years. And so this is just kind of a graphical representation of the end result. Next slide, please. And so this summary map is where we were able to identify projects per year for the next 10 years. And this is a map showing where all of those projects are located. Next slide, please. And this table summarizes the cost for that capital improvement plan. This essentially follows what is in the previously prepared capital facilities plan budget that was prepared late last year, with the exception of the bottom row there, next to the bottom row that says as budget allows. We also identified a lot of the collection system projects that weren't in that capital facility plan budget. In the case that we were able to come up with some extra funding for projects, we also have a hit list of projects to target with some extra money if we can come up with it. And so you can see that adds up to a little over $7 million for the collection system over the next 10 years. And then the $26 million for the treatment plant project, that's for the phase 1 upgrade project that's currently designed, and we're waiting to make a decision whether to move forward with that project or not. Next slide, please. And so this is just an example of one of the maps in the back of the general sewer plan. This just represents what one of the improvement projects would be. And we put these maps together because we have 10 years worth of projects and priorities change over time. So this should be really, these maps should be really useful for your city staff as you sit down and evaluate the annual budget. As a reminder of which projects, what areas the projects were targeting and what the suggested rehabilitation was for each of those projects. Next slide, please. And then just to give you a little bit of information as to how we came up with the scoring criteria. Essentially what we did was we looked at two different factors. One was the likelihood of failure, where we looked at things such as the pipe condition, the pipe age, the pipe material, and we've weighted all that together to come up with a score of how likely is a pipe to fail soon. Then the other criteria we looked at was the consequence of failure, was if a pipe failed, how big of a burden would it be? How many people would it put out of service? would it cause any environmental damage? So we essentially weighted all of those criteria for each pipeline. And this is how we came to the conclusion in terms of the scoring for each of the pipes in your system. Next slide, please. And then in terms of determining whether you're budgeting an appropriate amount per year for the rehabilitation of your system, this is a really simplistic way to look at it. But essentially, if we assume that pipes need to be replaced or rehabilitated either every 50 or every 75 years, the first set of graphs on the left there, if we look at the total cost of your entire collection system right now, and assume that you needed to replace everything by conventional excavated methods, you should be spending somewhere between $800,000 and $1.3 million per year to replace the system, which is a crazy cost. That's not a realistic number. But if we look at excluding all of the more current installed pipes, such as the ones that are PVC or the ones with modern construction methods, and if we looked at all of the other pipes and said that you needed to replace those by excavated costs, that would be somewhere between $330,000 and $500,000 a year. Again, that is very conservative and not realistic, because we know that a lot of your pipelines can be rehabilitated with trenchless methods. And so right here on the right-hand side is more realistic for your situation, where if we assume that all of the non-modern material pipes need to be replaced with a combination of trenchless and a little bit of excavation methods, you should be investing somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 per year in the rehabilitation of the sewer system. And that is almost what you guys are doing right now. So that should be some confidence that you guys are reinvesting in your system, and you're not waiting for it to completely fall apart before it becomes the big bill due to replace a lot of the system. So you're doing this in a smart way. And this 10-year capital improvement plan budget, if you implement it, it should give you some confidence that you're being smart with how you're operating your sewer collection system asset. Next slide, please. And so the general sewer plan document, it's an 8-chapter document. These made all the check boxes for what ecology likes to see in that document. That document has been submitted to ecology, and they're currently reviewing it. And so we're just waiting on their review and approval. And once we get any comments back from ecology, we'll incorporate them, and then we'll bring this plan forward to the city for formal adoption. Next slide, please. And one quick update in terms of funding. So we had identified 10 years worth of projects in the capital improvement plan budget. And ecology, normally every year there's a call for projects around October, and we can submit funding applications for particular projects. And generally ecology provides low interest loans for those projects, which is a great way to fund those projects over time. Occasionally they have some money available for those communities which qualify, which meet their hardship criteria. And the main driver for the hardship criteria is a high monthly utility rate relative to the median household income in the area. College Place meets ecology's hardship criteria. And in those cases, they're able to offer some grant funding for those communities. Normally, there isn't a lot of that money available, but now they have a lot of it available. And that's why they offered you such a large grant for your wastewater treatment plant project. And ecology's recently reached out to us and the city and said, if you had other projects that we could have quickly advertised for construction by, say, next summer, there's a chance that we could be offering 50% forgivable loan or grant, in other words, for those projects. So there's a good chance that a lot of this capital improvement plan budget, this 10 years worth of projects, we could tee it up and get it ready to get completed here in the next few years and take advantage of all of the grant funding that's available. So we've submitted a list of potential projects to ecology to add to their list. At this point, they're just kind of reaching out and finding out what the need is out there. And so we've added these projects to their list, and we'll see if it moves forward. But I think that's really promising for the city. And that is the end of my presentation. Any questions or comments?
All right, thank you, Alex. Anybody questions or comments?
I have a question regarding, if you go back to the slide, I believe it was chapter 7, talked about the, the priority, you were there, down, yeah. The prioritized list of projects. At any point in this plan, Alex, do you have to suggest or hint, lay the groundwork for the funding from ecology for any of these projects, or is that a separate part of this plan that would be submitted by the city at a later time?
Yeah, no. So in the document, we don't provide any formal plans for how to fund them. We just identify, generally speaking, here are some common funding avenues for these types of projects. So it doesn't get into the specifics. It's all this really does is lay out a list of projects. It doesn't promise when they will be done, and it doesn't commit the city to doing them by a certain date. This is just a list of projects that the city has on their to-do list, basically. And in terms of doing funding applications for the projects, that would be a separate effort.
Okay. Commissioner Kress or Williams, you're both muted if you were trying to get a comment in there.
I don't have any questions or observations at this time. The report sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
I saw this before at city council or the workshop, and I agree.
Okay, thank you, Alex, for that presentation. I'd like to just kind of make a comment. I know that we're doing a non-excavating job right now up on Mountain View with that same thing in mind, with, you know, lining some sewers that were in need up there and a water line at the same time.
Yeah,
So,
we
yeah.
did that around Puffling and Broadway area, the Mountain View one. That one we actually are having to excavate because that neighborhood, they actually are hooked in from the alley, like down 30 feet. So we're having to abandon those and like remove all the connections to the front. So that's why it's a mess over there.
All right, thank you. Yeah, the other comment I had was that, you know, our prior submittals or requests for funding to ecology and other things, and these types of plans that have been submitted by both the water system and the sewer plan, you know, really act favorably in the city's favor when they look at, you know, the professional approach that we're taking to these problems, and that it is being reviewed by many and asking for comments throughout. That I just want to commend everybody, staff and contractor here, on those proposals and what that means to us as far as future funding, because we couldn't do it without that. So thank you for that. Alex, and next we have the city engineer report.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, I just have a list of a few of the projects that we've been working on. So as your city engineer, we have a contract with the city to provide some on-call engineering support services for you. That includes doing plan reviews. So whenever a developer has a set of construction plans to review for a proposed development, we review those. So we've been doing that. We're also offering some GIS assistance. So in terms of updating your GIS maps when there's time to do that, we've been providing those services. And then also assistance with some funding applications. So there's a handful of transportation funding applications that your staff's working on, and we're helping to support their efforts in those funding applications and preparing cost opinions for some of those projects. So that's something we've been working on. You had mentioned the cured in place piping project for the sewer collection system. That has recently been wrapped up. That was about a 2-week project and they finished that. So that represented the 2022 projects we had identified for the sewer rehabilitation. So that project went well. And then you referred to the Mountain View project. That's actually a water main replacement project that's going on right now. The contractor's been working on that, and so we're partway through construction on that project. And then a couple projects, other projects that we're working on, the Southwest Sewer Project, that's the large construction project that's now almost wrapped up. That was the new lift station number 7 and sewer interceptor. That's all functioning right now. The last little bit we have to wrap up on that project is dealing with the contractor on some settlement that's in College Avenue. So we're currently negotiating with the contractor on what the fix is for that project. The plan is to do that work around mid-June, once school's out. And so we're currently going through negotiations with the contractor on exactly what that's going to look like. And that'll be the last piece on that Southwest Sewer Project. And then finally, the wastewater treatment plant. We are working on the regional study that involves looking at the option of building a sewer lift station down at the wastewater treatment plant and pumping all of College Place's sewage to Walla Walla. And then what impact that would have on Walla Walla's wastewater treatment plant. So that'll be something that will pique Jade's interest. And we'll be meeting with staffs from College Place and Walla Walla, as well as the Port of Walla Walla, to talk about the impacts of that and some of the design criteria and issues associated with that. So that's something we're working on right now. And that's the last project I had on my list in terms of projects we're working on for you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Alex? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the action agenda.
Okay, so for the action agenda, the first one is really the provisional recommendation for the water system plan, because as Mr. Withers alluded to, we've had several public hearings on it, and Department of Health is doing their final cursory review, but we think anytime now will be ready for prime time, and we'll get that letter, especially since this body meets quarterly. We do want to get that adopted in a judicious manner so we could go after the funding. So really subject to approval by Department of Health, so that we're putting this to you for a recommendation so we can move ahead once we get that.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion for that?
Yeah, motion to move the draft water system plan as prepared by RH2 to BLH.
Second.
Okay, is there any comment or further questions or comment on that? Motion to recommend City Council adopt the proposed College Place water system plan. Will that work?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Contingent upon ecology approval.
Yeah.
So we probably should get that in there. And I heard a second. Would the second be for that amended recommendation action?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All in favor of that motion, just raise your hand or say aye if you can.
Aye.
All right. And that is carried. And the next one is on the general sewer plan.
Really same dialogue on that. This has been going back and forth between council and this commission for over a year now, and same thing. So ecology is reviewing it, but upon that review, we would like to move forward and plugging away at the various grant loan applications. So with that, we're looking for a recommendation for this body, so City Council could adopt it as is State Department of Ecology.
I have a question. When are the two of these being considered at the same time? Do you have any time frame on when they would be? Let's just.
The state is the state, and it takes them a while, so they're a wild card. I have no idea.
So they didn't have a time frame.
No.
Okay. All right. With that in mind, is there a motion to recommend adoption of the proposed wastewater plan by the City Council pending Department of Ecology approval?
I so move that we adopt the Potential state wastewater project. Put it in good words for me.
Okay. We're-
Contingent upon ecology approval.
yeah.
Thank
So, okay.
Second.
Any comment or questions further? Okay, Dan, I had a second on that motion. Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right, it is carried. Okay, next, the potential state funding for wastewater projects, Mike.
Okay, thank you. So Alex alluded to this earlier, but the state started sending emails, both Alex and myself, like, hey, we think that there's like a boatload of money coming, and do you have like projects out of the sequence to go plug in? Now they do sell this as loans, however, because we are judicious about the wastewater rates and they see that in their eyes, we aren't like freeloading off their grant program. Half of that would be forgivable. So even though it is going into debt, eventually you're gonna have to do those projects anyway, and you basically get a 50% off coupon for going this route. So when the state gets back to me, and so we can move in a timely manner, I wanted to see if we could prioritize getting a list of projects to them, and they are as follows. So Southeast 12th Street, because as you know, we're trying to get TIB funding to rebuild that from College at Large. So we don't have to rip it up twice. It would be good to get that done when it's open. Also, the sewer lining projects for the next 2 bienniums. The other one too is Central Avenue Wastewater. Now this one is one we recently found out about. But it turns out that there's 2 blocks worth of homes that are on a private line that no one really knew about. It has issues. It's out in the city right away, but we don't own this line and it's having issues. So we really should get on that. So that would deal with that. And then we also found out that there's a failing line within the boundaries of Lions Park. And given the fact that we're about to put $4 million in there, we probably should, fix it while it's opened up. And then the other thing we're proposing as well is that lift station number 5, which we got Public Works Trust Fund for. But Public Works Trust Fund is a very low interest loan, but we may have the opportunity to swap out that loan money for this loan and then get a 50% grant. So we're proposing like a loan swap. So with that, I'm just trying to get buy-off from this commission because when word comes down from ecology, I think it's going to be whoever's first gets the money.
This is Ms. Williams. I move to recommend that the council authorize pursuit of this funding. I really appreciate Mike keeping on top of these things. And with the level of inflation that we expect to see, I think jumping on this right now makes a whole lot of sense.
I agree.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Melody. Is there a second on the motion to recommend that council authorize pursuit of the funding as so listed?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Okay, it is carried. We have one member that we couldn't see or hear in that case, but all those, I guess you'd say all the, huh? Oh, did you see him?
Yeah, they both had their hands raised.
Okay, I don't see John up there, so.
Oh, because,
Oh,
sorry, yeah, I can see him.
Okay, very good. All right, next, Mike, is the federal classification of Southeast 8th.
Yeah, as you all know, when it's warranted, we try to get roads federally classified, because if they are federally classified, they can qualify for federal and state grant funding. If they aren't federally classified, we're on our own with them. Recently, one of the transportation engineers from TIB, Transportation Improvement Board, was here walking the 4Bikes project. And then they're having additional money, so naturally I was trying to get him to pay for other projects. And while we were walking around town, we were along Southeast 8th Street, and I didn't think it'd qualify because the traffic counts on there aren't too spectacular. It's about roughly 200, 300 vehicles a day. However, it turns out that because one end is College Avenue with the city hall, and the other end is now a park with a farmer's market. So it turns out the farmer's market qualifies. So we can add it as a federally classified road, which would be good news because that road does not have sidewalk and there's a lot of issues with it. So therefore, I'm trying to seek recommendation from this body to proceed with getting it through council to get Southeast 8th from College to Larch is federally classified.
Okay. Do we have a motion to recommend the nomination of Southeast 8th Street, College Place to Larch to the city council?
I move to recommend the nomination of Southeast 8th College Place to Larch to the City Council, MPO and WSDOT as a federal collector.
Okay, any comments or questions?
My only comment is the farmer's market just seems to be the gift that just keeps on giving because
That's
it
great.
does so much for this city. And, you know, here's another example. So I'm really happy with the farmer's market.
Yeah.
2 weeks from
Starts 2
today.
weeks from today. Come support it.
All right, Melody, thanks for that comment. Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Okay, that is passed.
Thank you.
All right, Transportation Improvement Board grant programs, Mike.
Okay, so this gets into the previous item where their transportation engineer came out here to walk projects with us. Because for some reason, it seemed like they were skeptical. We actually completed 4Bikes because apparently of the cities that got the complete street money, they said because of COVID and cost overruns, 85% of them turned the money back in. So they're carrying a very large balance right now in a variety of grant programs that they're trying to spend down now. So naturally seeing an opportunity when Andrew came here and he's like, oh, you want to spend money? I will show you some places. So there's a couple of programs that we qualify for, and I'll go over each one. Urban Arterial program that pays for federal classified roadways in the community. And I'm seeking provisional approval on the projects and we'll submit them because they'll be due later this summer before we meet again. So for the Urban Arterial program, the one is Southeast 12th. Naturally, we're trying to get that redone. Then the second one is one that we talked about the last meeting. And it turned out at Damson because some on the even though they were trying to push it as out of the sequence project, the TIB board balked at doing it out of their normal process at the last minute. So they said to submit it during the normal process, but we have 100% engineered plans. We just need the money to go build it. So Damson, for the sidewalks, it turns out when they submitted our original sidewalk application, they were looking at it just from the aerial imagery. So I actually made him like walk it with me when we were here. And he was like, oh, it is bad. And it's like, yeah, it is. So he's going to advocate to get Ash some of the ramps over on Date Street because because there's sidewalks that are only 3 feet wide along there. So get that fixed up. And also there's a half a block of Lambert that doesn't have any sidewalk either between, it's weird, we have like a multi-use path from C Street up to Spitzenberg, and then it goes nothing from Spitzenberg up to Rose, so you just get stuck out there. Also, since we have the 4 Bikes project done, as I said, they are carrying a large balance now because a bunch of cities turn their, if you hadn't used the money for the project, you actually had to give the money back to them. So there's opportunity potentially for 2 projects. The first one is to put pedestrian lighting on Northeast Rose Street, that multi-use path, because if you bike out there at night, there's actually no lights with the exception of Damson and Lambert. So basically the lighting we have on 4th Street, similar treatment. So along the multi-use path every 180 feet up to Terry Court. The other one, when we were walking around, and this one hasn't been previously discussed, so George, this one you'll probably be really interested in. When we were walking the 4 Bikes project, he made a comment to the effect of, oh, well, why don't you put pedestrian lights down Davis and Ash and Whitman? And I pretty much made a comment, well, if you pay for it, okay, so. And he was like, well, turn it in when they do the next call. So I went approval from this body for the UAP program to turn in Damson and 12th for sidewalks to resubmit what we did last year, since he now sees that there is an issue. And then for complete streets, the Rose project, as well as lighting basically around the whole boundaries of the campus of Walla University.
Well, as the representative from that body, I'm sure they will be favorable towards that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just curious what he thought of the completed 4 Bikes project on 4th Street.
Oh,
Did
he-
you get a chance to?
Yeah,
look at
yeah,
that?
we walked the whole thing,
Yeah.
and he is very impressed by it. He didn't say it's outright, but it seemed like he was skeptical. We actually got the whole thing completed
Well, it was-
as what
It was
was
a very tight
designed.
timeline.
Yeah.
So it was impressive.
Yeah. So with that, because we got it done in such a short time frame, and many other cities turned back in that money, it seems like there's a appetite to, since they know we can get stuff done quickly here, to go
And correctly.
to go repurpose other monies quickly.
Okay. Lisa, if that wasn't blue, I could read it better. I know it shows it up
Yeah.
where it is, but so we're looking for a motion to recommend city staff proceed with following projects for grant funds: the urban arterial program and the sidewalks program and the complete street that Mike has presented here.
So move.
Motion for that. Okay, it's been so moved. Any further questions or comments? Okay, not hearing any. Is there a second?
Second.
And we have a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay. It is carried. Okay, thank you for those reports and the motions and the thought on that, and the prior studying. I know there's been a lot of material on some of this. So we have a report from, is this Robert McAndrews?
Well, you skipped one. There's one more in the action agenda.
Oh, sorry,
item,
the
so-
pavement rating
yeah.
report. Yes.
And this is
Thank you, Mike.
yeah, and this one was added just because over time I get a lot of random complaints about this, and there's nothing I can do about it with it. Like, if it is that big of an issue, we need money for it. So a number of folks complain about our local roads, like, hey, we don't like the chip seal, or why don't you go put a sidewalk between Davis and Academy on 2nd and 3rd. We get a lot of quips about many things that way. As I mentioned, for those roads that don't have either a community facility like a farmer's market, or have traffic counts that in excess of typically around 500, one or the other, the city has to pay for that alone. And we really don't have a dedicated source of funding. We have a dwindling motor fuel tax, and then beyond, we have a street fund, but The truth of the matter is, all that is, that's robbing Peter to pay Paul, because it's a transfer out of current expense. So it's not like a self-sustaining fund. So many years ago, when I first started here, we did put in the code about a transportation benefit district, about working on creating one, because it can go through like voter approval. It's like 1/10 of 1% sales tax, because then folks outside your community, especially since we have Hop Thief, Walmart, Home Depot, you know, they're helping to pay for the roads. And Walla Walla, they just got theirs renewed. They've had, I mean, now they're like on their 11th year of this. We don't have one. So that's the issue. As you can see, we've been very creative trying to federally classify stuff. However, I think with 8th Street, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to fib any more federally classified streets. Because luckily we have the farmers market and stuff where we were able to make a case for that. But like other ones, like Southeast Birch, where I live, for example, that the traffic warrants just aren't there to federally classify it. And because we've been so good at federally classifying stuff when I got here, I mean, our local roads at the time were on a replacement schedule of every 250 years. And since that time, it's like shrunken. But the issue, especially if we're going to go to the voters about this kind of thing, we really need a decent pavement management report. So there's companies that do that where they drive it and then say, and then essentially they give you a prioritization, and then they have more accurate costs of stuff, especially the way inflation is throwing things out of whack. So I mean, if we're gonna go with voters, we need something that has concrete data behind it. So I sought some proposals, and there's a company that has done one of these for City of Pendleton. And the general cost on that is where they drive it, they come up with prioritization, they give you the maps, and then you have the report. And the Pendleton ones attached was a little bit north of 15,000 to do the report. So what I am seeking approval of this body for, if there's the appetite for it, is to pursue doing one of these studies. Now, because of some efficiencies that we've made on achieving the broadband, that I'll mention in the admin reports, we do have some residual money left over out of ARPA, out of our American Rescue Plan Act money, where I think we could essentially get the 15 from there. So I mean, it's fine if we don't want to do this. It's just, I hear this common thread out while I'm biking about, oh, I hate chip seal. Oh, why is this road horrible? And we do what we can, but if that's really a big thing for people, our magic wand only goes so far. And ultimately, it fixes local roads. We're no different than Walla Walla. I mean, they did the TBD, and if it's that big of an issue, we're gonna need to do one too. And I mean, if it's not to sound insensitive, but people are gonna have to live with the chip seal then, if that's what they so desire.
Well, just a comment that people seem to complain about roads more than absolutely everything. So if we did a study, then they would have it in black and white. And I think it might at least make people feel a little better.
This is
Yeah.
Commissioner Williams.
Go ahead.
I agree absolutely with the comment that was just made. And I also would like to make two comments, I guess. On the Pendleton one, I looked through that entire report and there weren't any maps. And so my comment was going to be, we need to specify maps in our.
Yeah, correct.
Because you saw how helpful the ones in the water and sewer were. And secondly, I think this is a really good way to do this because A, we need the funding, and B, it actually makes it so that the people who drive on the roads help pay for the roads. Whereas if it's a property tax, you know, it's not necessarily the people that are coming to Walmart or Home Depot or the university or wherever they're going. So I support this, and I would move to recommend the city council proceed with a pavement management ratings report. I knew there was one more thing, sorry. The pavement for most small cities is our biggest asset in terms of replacement cost. So taking care of it only makes sense.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
second the
We
motion.
have a motion. Is there any other further comment?
I just had a question.
Questions?
As
Go
far
ahead.
as this report, Mike, would this be a one-time report? Or would this be something that would come back every, I don't know, 3 years, 5 years?
Like, so the full cost of it would be one time as far as that 15 goes, but there's an email attachment in there where I wanted to say they were recommending to essentially get refreshed every 3 or 4 years. And I want to say the cost on that was like around 4,000, I
missed that. I
believe. So, yeah.
apologize. Okay.
Yeah, I would like to note too, that the estimate, it's an estimate
Yeah.
of 15,000.
Yeah.
And that does include maps.
Yeah.
The estimate, not including maps, was somewhat
12.
about 12,000, I think, if I recall. So it does include maps at the 15. So I think that's why you were
Yeah.
using that figure.
Yeah.
And also, you know, it is probably something that as we do improvements, our own staff could upgrade the report interim between,
Yeah.
and we might be able to extend that out a little farther than 2 to 3 years if staff is maintaining that as we do improvements to the streets, we update the plan. And thirdly, I would say that whether or not we're going for a voter approved increase in funding, that this would have many good returns on our other funding avenues. And also because if you have streets categorized, that helps you get funding because they know that you're deciphering which ones are in the most need. And that it would just be an overall good thing for the city to know what their capital improvements are going to need to be for that long-term kind of thing. So I would agree with the motion. Is there any further comments? Okay, I think I heard a second earlier on the motion, and we have a second. And all those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, it is carried. And now we have a report. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
The National Resource Conservation Service, Watershed Protection and Flood Prevention Act.
Okay, this one is just essentially a little study document detailing what they see the needs are. Now, we've mentioned this a short while back, but roughly about a year ago, and JUB helped identify this opportunity. In the last farm bill, the National Resource Conservation Service has this like program that's like buried in their authorization called the PL 566 program. And they pay for a third-party engineer to do a study. And the study basically lists what you can do to like improve water quality. And if you meet a return on investment, where basically it improve at least the amount of lands that it improves goes over the 20% of the cost that they're going to dump into it, then typically what they'll do is they'll fund items up to 80%. So it's like an 80-20 split with the city, and then go along that way. So this document details their findings so far. So please review it. Let me know if you have any suggestions or edits to get back to them, because we need to get back any comments that we all have with this to them, because the NRCS people are determining essentially what their recommended route will be. And you'll see that there's roughly like 4 alternatives in there. The one on their part would be do nothing, which in talking with them, that they would not be opting that way, because as you all know, before we had the stormwater utility, the city historically pretended like stormwater didn't exist. So that's why we're playing catch up now. Then the other options, they go from essentially them just paying for outfall filters, which I want to say is around like the 6 million price tag. And then Options 3 is dealing with some other stormwater improvements that are in our capital facility plan to the tune of around 12. And then option 4 is basically merging options 2 and 3, where they would do both of them, which is honestly what the tree we're barking up, because if you go in the capital facility plan for stormwater, because we turned a blind eye to it for so long, I mean, the backlog on that is like over $19 million. So if we can get someone else to pay for it, that would be a good thing. So if you have any comments or that I can relay them, please let me know. But otherwise, we're hoping that they will pay for it. If they do pay for it, those improvements would occur at a fever pitch, because when you look in that study, the estimated timeline on that is if we all agreed to the option 2, 3, or 4, really they would be working to fund those improvements in total over the next 2 or 3 years. So.
Two things. One would be, do we have any studies right now on the water quality that downstream, that we can compare to when we do or is that yet to come? Is that study yet to come as well?
That one would be yet to come, because they're doing, this study was the part they wanted our comments on. The other one, which they're in the process of doing, is the downstream water quality, which they're aggregating at Garrison Creek, Stone Creek, and Military Springs downstream of us, and then the Walla River.
Okay, because we want to make sure and have that in place. The other thing I might say, and I don't know for sure, but it seems like if the two are aggregated together, there's a better chance that you'll hit your criteria, because some of them, like maybe the outfall filters, are going to be lower hanging fruit and make the biggest difference. And if you do that first, it might be hard to get that 20% increase with the next project over and above that, but the two together might hit 20% and provide for the funding. So I think maybe looking at putting them together, aggregating the two, you're more likely to hit your target.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want to take the low hanging fruit first, but yet that's the biggest impact to our environment. So we want to do what's responsible as well, I guess. So that would be my comment. Yeah. Anybody else?
This is Commissioner Williams, and I have a couple of questions. First is, do you have a due date for when you need comments? That always helps me.
Yeah, the due date for needing comments on this would be the end of the month, so like May 31st, because apparently they're going to conference at their office in Spokane Valley. After that, and probably by the end of June, we're going to know where they stand.
And then my other question was, and this is without reading the report, so you may just want to point me to a section in the report, but it said put regulations on new development. And, that's my background, making stormwater regulations, but I do want to make sure that we have a pretty good idea of what kinds of regulations they would want, to make sure that, we agree that they're feasible.
Honestly, that was something I noticed on that one too. So that's a comment we could put back to them. Essentially, what kind are they looking for? Because we already have like a stormwater management code we adopted when we were basically made to make our utility by the state. So one would hope that would suffice, but I don't know. So that's something I can relay to them.
Yeah, I think our comment should be that we believe that our code will meet what they need for future development. It's the existing that we need to work on, and let them argue us down if they have to. If they're going at this speed, they're going to be happy for anything that saves them time, as long as it's reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else? All right. Next is the telephone data systems.
Yeah. So this TDS, that's actually the name of a private sector company. And what's happening is, as you know, an initiative really that both cities were working on, and the city councils of both had a joint meeting a couple months ago, and there's going to be another one next week. Is the fact that broadband is really an issue here in town, where some areas have really good broadband, like here, for example. However, you go a block from here to everyone that lives like off of Southeast Birch, and your internet drops off on the hour. So that has been the issue, and the current providers to this day have really demonstrated that they're fine with the way things are, which has been problematic. So both cities were evaluating, like, do we build our own broadband and try to get grant money for it? Do we partner with someone? How we do this thing? And with our ARPA allocations, council allocated 100,000 to aid in those efforts. However, upon we had Joe Poirier, who is the manager from Petrichor, which is this broadband co-op that a lot of the ports use. And the issue, which I mean, it would be a challenge to get the amount of grants and stuff to cover this, is to adequately cover both cities. I mean, you could attain it here, but it would be very expensive. To run the broadband down all streets here would be about 8 million. And then in Walla Walla, the estimate was north of 24 million. Well, fast forward, apparently we made enough noise in general where we started attracting the interest of this company that's trying to go into areas where they're served, but just not spectacularly. So I end up getting an email from them, and they have investor money, and what they're looking at doing is essentially a private-public partnership where they'll just go in and build the broadband, and they'll offer the services. They're saying $40 a month for multiple gig service. And then they're also willing to essentially sublease the broadband to other providers as well. Naturally, hearing all this, Nabil and I were both a little skeptical of it, and we were like, well, how soon and what do you want from us, essentially? And apparently they've gotten a lot of investor money. So this company wants to build out in West Richland, West Pasco, basically areas that have had their backs turned by the private sector pretty much. So West Richland, West Pasco, Sela, Union Gap, Walla Walla, and then here. And pretty much what they relayed to us was, just don't make us go through a painful franchise process, like just hurry it up and basically get out of our way, and then we'll do it. So right now I'm negotiating with them in the franchise, as is Walla Walla. They really like College Place, where they're probably going to start here first, because as you recall, as we've been doing these public works projects, we've been putting in blank conduit the whole time. So they actually don't have to drill as much as they have to in Walla. They just need to run fiber through existing pipes in many areas. So and actually that is likely going to provide a revenue mechanism for a city too, because we do have a lease contract that we use where it's like 2 cents a linear foot per month. So we are working on this negotiation with them. Council's going to be briefed on it. I thought I would brief you all, because in the past meetings we've been talking about this at length. And the issue grant wise is how, like, when you work on housing, everyone refers to missing middle. That also applies with broadband, we found out, because what happens is if you have a population density of Portland, Gresham, even Tri-Cities, there's an urban program and you can get below the grant money. If you're in a rural area, so for example, Loudon, Touchy, Waitsburg, Burbank, Wallula, there's actually a rural program, and right now the port's going to be the port was able to put in like 5G internet, where by the end of this year, without this, the rural areas would have better internet than we would have here in both cities. However, for these middle areas where you aren't as big as like the metro area, or you aren't as small as these rural pockets, basically you were written out of a lot of the federal programs, we've come to find out. So you're either left with the choices of trying to find limited grant money and then bond the rest of it, which you can make back, or try to find a private partner and just go with town on this. So unless there's information we haven't found yet, which today we haven't, they've run this kind of system out on the East Coast. This looks like a decent thing. So we plan on continuing negotiations, working expeditiously on this and get them in. If we meet all of their parameters, when Nabil and I last met with them, they made Nabil made a joke offhand to the effect of, oh, it'd be great if by the time because he's retiring next year, he made the comment, oh, it'd be great by the time I retire if everything is done. Thinking that it was like a joke, and they made a comment, well, if you get our franchise thing done quickly, they said, we have investors that we need to pay back, and they said, we will get both of you done by the time of Halloween of 2023. So we were very surprised at that, but they seem like they really want to go. So that's just a brief you all on this, but if you see franchises and other stuff flying at much greater speed than other things, that's why. So.
Question, Mike. I believe this actually came up last night at Walla City Council, but I was thinking that there was a mention that there's actually 3 fiber companies really fighting with each other to get into College Place and Walla Walla. Is that correct?
The other 2, I will say, have an angle to them. Because I mean, I used to run a broadband system in the south suburbs of Chicago, and the other 2 I don't really take seriously.
Okay.
They seem to be more fly by night. This one is more of a track record. It seems like we've gotten on their radar though, because we've been making noise about this missing middle broadband issue.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for that. And the draft ADA transition plan.
Yeah, so draft ADA transition plan, there is no action on this today, but please start reviewing it because this will come for action the next meeting next quarter. So our engineering intern, Aquia, and then Walla Valley Blue Zones, they actually helped us complete this. The city has never had an ADA transition plan ever. And in all fairness, historically, we weren't mandated to have one. However, our population is right at 10,000, which what that means now is regardless, we would have been made to have one by next year from a federal and a state level. Otherwise, we wouldn't be eligible for grants, which as you've seen by the rest of this meeting would be a major issue here. So this sets a prioritization in just areas where we need to improve our ADA, especially when you're in the older part of the community. Data Avenue is a prime example. You have the sidewalks that are only 3 feet, and then there aren't really ramps in those areas. It's just a tall curb and you have to jump over it. So this sets that prioritization and will allow us to get grant money. So if you have any edits, please let me know, but this will go for action your next meeting.
Mike, what's the timeline that you'd like to kind of have this draft done?
Yeah, so I would like to get this recommended by this body, the next meeting in August. And I would like this to basically be adopted by council in September because on a state level, next year is gonna be when they're duking it out for the next biennium. So I mean, if we have this, we may be able to slide projects in this into various funding programs they have. So I need this thing adopted before the end of the year so we can make those inroads.
It kind of ties in with the pavement rating
Yeah.
report and all of that funding and because you want to do those projects together for
Yeah.
synergy of funds and time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Appreciate that. We've already seen a good presentation of that as well
Mhm.
prior.
was an
And it
excellent
was
one.
very impressive, so
Mhm,
look forward to seeing that final
mhm.
version instead of the draft, so. Okay, that concludes our agenda for today. Is there any other comments or questions,
I
Dan?
have two questions. One, now that College Place went through raising the speed limit along Morrison, any feedback?
I mean, at first there were a couple folks on Facebook that were like, oh, why do you do that? But pretty much no matter what you do, you get those comments. I'll say out in the field, cause I ride my bike all over the place and stuff. It seemed like people appreciated that we've done that, and there hasn't really been any sort of factual outreach, I would say, based on data or other things to show that it was an incorrect decision, so.
I think it cuts down on the perception of the gotcha thing where speed limits change from one to the other and back again, and you get stopped in that area where it changed to, and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. So it reduced the gotcha factor.
And second question, any update on the Meadowbrook Walmart entrance reconfiguration?
Yeah, so yeah, that has just been a staffing issue, why we haven't been able to get to that. I would suspect in the next month we'll be able to, because there ended up being a vacancy in the Parks Department, and basically it turned into revolving deck chairs, all of the public works people changing positions, so that's the issue.
Yeah, I might add, I noticed their crew out on Ash and Whitman upgrading the crosswalk safety there, which was a priority. They needed to get done before that. So because it's a listed school zone, they've been putting up crosswalk signs specifically for the school zone there. So yeah, I was kind of helped them look at sign placement there, so I was familiar with that. Hey, anybody else? John or Melody, go ahead.
I most likely will not be able to attend the next meeting. It is my birthday and my daughter and I are planning a trip. So, I potentially could join by computer, but I really don't want to commit to that.
Okay. Thank you. All right, anybody else?
I just have a question. It's kind of in the moral ethic things. 'Cause
Yeah.
I've never served on one of
Yeah.
these committees before, so I just want to make sure that if I don't want to be self-serving, so if one of these
Yeah.
projects definitely affects me in
Yeah.
a positive way because of where I live, I don't want to, I guess, use that to my advantage. So, what's the feeling of this commission about that?
Well, I think that's why there's more than one commissioner,
Yeah.
for one.
Okay.
And you are a representative for your area as a commissioner.
Okay.
If it was to financially affect you,
Yeah.
you would need to recuse yourself. from
Okay,
the vote
thank
in the
you.
Discussion.
Yeah, but as far as
But
one,
just
for a
condition of
tangentially,
life.
it like benefits the quality of life in the neighborhood. I mean, that's why you're on the commission to provide the voice for that. So I'll give you a for example, for instance, like, let's say with the CDBG program, you house you lived in didn't have a sidewalk, and let's say one of the areas was there's gonna be a sidewalk exactly right in front of your house. While I would say that, because it would cover more in your house, that wouldn't be a bad thing. Personally, my optics, I would probably like back off on that one, but like other areas, like where we're doing repavings or lighting, that's a macro level issue, so.
Okay, good. I just find
Or
it
if there was a
myself.
right of way purchase on
Yeah.
your property.
Yeah, if we were buying right
you were
away
actually
from you,
benefiting
or-
from the right of way, then. yeah.
Something financial to benefit you. That would be when you
Yeah.
would need to recuse yourself.
That's
Okay,
that's
thank
good, good question.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anything else? All right, well, that concludes our agenda and our comments. And so at 4:59, we conclude this meeting.
Good timing.
Wow.
Yeah.
We went through that quick.
Bye.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much. Thank you for the fiber optics project.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about that. Everybody that comes to my house is like.
And Fourth really does look nice.
Yeah.
I actually walked it the other day.
Yeah.
Nice job.
It looks even better at night.
Yeah, it
actually.